Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for OSPF's April webinar. Our topic today is going to be Autism and Suicide Prevention, Understanding the Risks, the Warning Signs, and Autism-Informed Support. My name is Emily, and I am the comms coordinator for the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation, and I have the privilege of hosting our webinar today. In honor of World Autism Month, I'm really excited to share that we have three fabulous presenters from the Autism Society of Greater Akron. I will introduce them in just a moment. But before we get started, I'd like to do some quick housekeeping. After this webinar today, I'm going to send each of you a follow-up email. In this email, you will get the link to the post-webinar survey, the presentation slides, and the recording. The survey is going to be required for any of you that would like to receive either CE credits or a certificate of attendance. And please make sure you complete that survey by April 22nd, which is a week from today. I'm going to say this twice just to make sure everybody hears that CE credits are only available to OSPF members. That is CE credits only available to OSPF members. But anyone can receive that certificate of attendance. And if you would like to become a member, I will include that link in the webinar recap email as well. And then those certificates will be sent within 30 days. At the end of our presentation, we'll have time for Q&A, so please feel free to submit those questions through the Q&A feature. I want to note we have a lot of great information today in a really full room, so we may be only able to get to a couple of questions, but our three presenters will share their contact information so that you can follow up with them directly. All right, now let me introduce who we have today. Starting with Nathan, Nathan Briggs has led the Autism Society of Greater Akron since October 2024, bringing nearly 20 years of experience supporting the autism community. His career spans roles as direct support, administrator, and executive, all dedicated to creating meaningful opportunities for individuals and families. He holds an executive MBA from Case Western Reserve University, a master's of public administration from Marist College, and a bachelor's in secondary education from SUNY New Paltz. His leadership is also shaped by his service as a crew chief in the New York State Air National Guard during 9/11 and the War on Terror. Nathan, thank you for your service. As only the second executive director in ASGA's history, Nathan is proud to build on the foundation of his predecessor and continue advancing the mission of connecting and empowering the greater Akron autism community. Next up, we have Lisa Thompson. Lisa is the Senior Director of Programs at the Autism Society of Greater Akron, and she got involved in 2011 as a volunteer camp director and has been part of the team since 2012. Her background is in business and marketing from Mars Hills College in Asheville, North Carolina, but her real passion is helping families living the autism journey feel supported and included. As a mom to twin boys, one who is on the autism spectrum, she knows firsthand how overwhelming the journey can be. And that's why she works so hard to create programs and trainings that make life just a little bit easier and a lot more joyful for these families. She lives in Copley with her husband Greg and their sons Joshua and Jordan. And last but not least, we have Melanie Timko, who serves as the Senior Director of Development at the Autism Society of Greater Akron. With experience across both education and business, Melanie brings a value-centered approach to advancement and honoring the support behind it. She holds a doctorate in education and organizational leadership, two master's degrees from the University of Cincinnati and BW, and her bachelor's in education from the University of Akron. She and her husband are grateful parents to three neurodivergent sons, ages 9, 19, and 22, and parenting across those ages and stages has helped deepen her connection to the autism community and her respect for their strength and vibrant individuality. All right, Nathan, Lisa, Melanie, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here today. I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to you all.
Emily, we would just like to thank you, OSPF, and the attendees this afternoon as well. We deeply appreciate the opportunity to be able to connect with you and the community for this really important conversation.
Thank you.
So, good afternoon. I am Nathan Briggs. Delightful to be able to speak with you today. Welcome. We thank you for your leadership and for your commitment to the well-being of not just the autism community, but the community as a whole here in the state of Ohio. So just wanted to offer a little bit of a content warning, just to be able to let everybody know that if you should encounter things that do make you feel uncomfortable, that just to give you a little bit of a forewarning around that so that you can make an appropriate choice and the choice that will best serve you in being able to and be able to get as much out of this presentation as you can. And if there are things that do make you feel uncomfortable, please feel free to step out at any point. We'd be very happy to be able to connect afterwards as well, to be able to have a conversation that if you do have further questions after today, we'd be able to help address. Also, just a disclaimer, this is for informational purposes only. We are not licensed clinicians, therapists, or medical providers. We just want to be very clear about that. We are experts about certain things. Those are not our fields of expertise. Just and as a general reminder that if you do feel you need immediate help, 988 is always available, and please do not hesitate to reach out to be able to utilize that. So our expertise is not in the clinical field, but it is around the autism community. So the Autism Society of Greater Akron is one of six affiliates of a national organization called the Autism Society of America here in the state of Ohio. And as an affiliate of our national organization, we commit to a mission of creating connections that empower everyone in the autism community with resources to live a full life. And for us as Greater Akron, our autism community is all of Summit County, along with four other counties here in Northeast Ohio. And we are also a part of a statewide collective called the Autism Society of Ohio that really does allow for us to be able to help present things of value for the entire state of Ohio. And where we are, our field of expertise when it comes to the idea of the autism community is understanding what that means, because it is significant that our mission statement is centered on both literally and figuratively the autism community. It is not people with autism. It is not autistic people. It is the autism community. And so one of the things that we have come to understand and to accept around what the autism community is, it is the 1 in 31 children under age 8 getting diagnosed today. It is the 1 in 45 adults. It is the 5.4 million adults who have already been diagnosed with ASD. It is the people who would have, could have, should have been diagnosed had we had a greater awareness, had we had a greater acceptance, had we had more equitable access to the trained professionals who actually can assign a diagnosis. And it is also their loved ones, their friends, their family, their firemen, their policemen, the community in which they live every day and determining making those choices around quality of life. So that when we say the autism community, what we have come to understand and to accept is that we are talking about the community. So how can we best play a role in being able to help add to access to resources for everyone to be able to live a full life, which is one of the many reasons why we are grateful to be able to connect with OSPF and with you today to be able to talk about how we may be able to do that into this critical issue. And with that, why this matters is because ASD really is everywhere in the community. And along with that, risk increases for members of the autism community when distress is missed or misunderstood. And to talk a little bit more about that, I'm going to stop sharing and pass it over to Lisa so she can talk a little bit more about why this matters so much. Lisa? You're muted, Lisa.
Yeah, there's too many buttons. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, no.
Not yet. Okay. Mm, There we go. Okay, so I want to pause for a moment and make sure that we have an understanding of what autism actually is, and just as importantly, what autism isn't. So autism is actually a spectrum. It is not a straight line. So an individual with autism is not more or less autistic. It is a mix of autistic traits. It's a mix of characteristics that show up differently in every person. So if you look at the wheel on the left, you can see the spectrum of characteristics that are associated with autism. And then if you look at the smaller wheels on the right, these represent three different individuals with autism. The size or depth of each slice shows how strongly that characteristic affects that particular person. The larger the slice, the more that trait plays a bigger role in daily life, or that area may require more support, energy, or accommodation. The smaller the slice means that the trait is still present, but it impacts daily life less often or less intensely. So, two autistic people can have completely different strengths, needs, and ways of expressing distress, and both experiences are equally valid. This also is why, when you look at those wheels and you see the bigger slices, those are the things that can present themselves as more distress because they're already intense for that individual. So let's talk about one important question. What makes autistic distress unique? One of the biggest risks for autistic people isn't that they don't experience distress, it's that their distress often isn't recognized when it's happening. Autistic distress doesn't always look the way people expect emotional distress to look. So when you think about distress, I think what kind of words come to mind? We think of a person maybe crying, or they're sad, or they're angry, or maybe somebody's actually verbalizing that they are in need of help. However, I'd like to talk about a few common ways distress can change how autism shows up during crisis. The first is executive functioning. So we don't usually associate executive functioning with emotional distress, but executive functioning includes things like starting tasks, organizing thoughts, planning next steps, initiating communication. So when an autistic person is overwhelmed, these skills are often the first ones that shut down. So distress doesn't sound like I'm okay and I need help. It can present itself as stuck or missed appointments, unanswered messages, um, appointments that don't get scheduled, or forms that never get filled out. But really, why would they? Because what's really happening is the person wants help, but literally cannot initiate it. They can't really even take that first step of picking up the phone and calling someone for an appointment with the counselor, or calling a friend and asking for help. So next is communication differences. This is another way that distress can get missed, because some autistic people respond to distress by talking a lot. They may, what we call information dump. So they tell you everything about their life, and it can be what's going on, what pain they're feeling, and it can be on a variety of different topics. It can be all jumbled, and so it might not make any sense to you. One thing I can think of is if someone were to say something like, I was trying to start the form, but then I remembered the email, and then that reminded me of the meeting last week, which didn't go well. So should I schedule another one? But where do I mail the form? Everything just makes me feel stuck. I don't know where to start. So you can hear in all of that conversation, there's a lot of things in there, and it presents itself as a lot of info dumping and a lot of jumbled words that maybe don't make sense to a person who's not aware of what distress can look like when there is a communication difference. Emotional expression. There are differences that can present differently in an autistic person that can be missed because the way emotions are felt and talked about are different. For many autistic people, emotions don't show up first as a clear feeling with a name. A lot of individuals actually have trouble naming what they're feeling and which emotion it is attached to. They may actually feel their mental state first. So they may feel looping thoughts or confusion or feeling overloaded. Or they may feel physical sensations such as tension and pressure or really deep exhaustion. So putting an emotion into words can take extra effort, especially under stress. And when someone is overwhelmed, access to emotional language can drop even further. And they can be misinterpreted as that person is really not upset at all, when actually there might not be an outward showing of that emotion, but what's going on underneath the surface can be really real and really intense. So because of that, the kind of language or the way emotions are used instead of language to express distress can be overlooked. Autistic burnout is a real thing. burnout isn't just being tired. It is actually a prolonged state of physical, emotional, and cognitive exhaustion. During burnout, you can have a sudden loss of skills, you can have increased meltdowns and shutdowns. Sensitivities can become stronger. Um, and the way that, sorry, excuse me, the way that they present themselves may look like a person is falling apart or they're no longer functioning the way that they used to. But burnout does not come out of nowhere. It's actually a slow build of when a person is pushing through exhaustion, masking their needs, managing high expectations, or coping without enough support or recovery time. Most importantly, autistic burnout is not a failure. It's not laziness, and it's not a loss of motivation. It's actually the nervous system that has been under strain for too long. I think it's important to clarify too that these characteristics are not problems to be fixed. They are ways autistic nervous systems respond to stress. And the risk of suicide comes when these signals are misunderstood, when silence is taken as not caring, disorganization is seen as not trying, or matter-of-fact language is mistaken for lack of emotion. When distress isn't recognized for what it is, support can, be late in being administered, or it can not be administered at all. And so that's where our risks tend to escalate. Now that we understand some of the ways autistic distress can show up, I want to talk about a few things that increase suicide risk, even when someone doesn't seem verbally distressed. Research actually consistently shows that many autistic people who struggle with suicidal thoughts also have at least one mental health condition, such as anxiety, depression, or trauma, OCD, those types of things. But a lot of times those symptoms can be mistaken for just being part of autism, and they don't always get the attention or care they deserve. So when those needs aren't recognized or supported, the level of risk can quietly increase. Another factor that can increase risk is masking. So many autistic people hide their needs or traits in order to fit in, especially if they are in an environment where they don't feel safe or accepted. Because of this, distress can be harder to see. Masking may delay a person's diagnosis or make it seem like someone is doing fine even when they're struggling. One common example that we can utilize is masking in our students at school. An autistic student may spend all day working incredibly hard to stay on task, follow rules, manage sensory input, and meet the expectations of their teachers or their peers. They're holding themselves together, watching their behavior and pushing through discomfort. But when they get home, that is a safe place for them. And so everything comes out. So that's when you can see meltdowns and shutdowns and explosive emotions. So they might also appear extremely exhausted. But what's important to understand is that this is not really a sudden change in behavior. It's the release after a full day of masking and holding it together. Autistic women and girls. Masking is a real thing for our autistic women and girls. They're more likely to mask, more likely to be misdiagnosed, or in some cases diagnosed later in life, and more likely have distress overlooked, especially when they appear successful and maybe don't require a lot of support. Many learn to fit in by copying social behavior, rehearsing conversations, forcing eye contact, or pushing themselves to keep up even when they're exhausted. Because of this, things can look stable on the outside, even when they're not on the inside. Another area, one of the strongest areas actually, that increases suicide risk for autistic youth is bullying. Autistic students are bullied much more often than their peers, and that bullying is often underreported or overlooked. It may not always look like obvious teasing or physical aggression. It can show up as ongoing exclusion, subtle targeting, or repeated rejection that goes unnoticed by adults. Over time, these experiences can deeply affect how someone sees themselves, how safe they feel with others, and how much they trust the world around them. There's a common myth that autistic people don't want friends and prefer to be alone. For many, the opposite is actually true. They want connection, but may have difficulty navigating social situations. When autistic youth seem isolated, it may not be a choice. It may be the result of repeated social rejection that hasn't been recognized or addressed. For some autistic people, distress shows up through behavior instead of words. That might look like withdrawing, shutting down, becoming more irritable, refusing tasks, leaving situations suddenly, increased sensory reactions, or new or more frequent behaviors, such as increased stimming, which might include rocking, pacing, hand movements, or other repetitive motions. These behaviors are often misunderstood or they're misunderstood as misconduct or misbehavior or sometimes defiance, and when they are actually real signs that something isn't okay. When these signals are misread, distress goes unrecognized, and important opportunities to provide support are missed. And finally, access matters. Autistic individuals often face real barriers when trying to get mental health care. There are long wait lists, limited autism-informed providers, inaccessible environments, and a misinterpretation of autism traits. When care is hard to access or not a good fit, support is delayed and risk increases. Regular access to trusted autism-informed care makes it safer for people to share distress earlier before things actually reach the crisis point. So what matters most is noticing patterns early rather than waiting for a single red flag before autistic distress becomes crisis. So I'm going to turn it over to Melanie now, and she's going to talk about some of the ways for prevention.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, one of my goals for this section is that whether you are a parent, whether you are a dear friend, community member, or a practitioner, that something in the next 12 minutes will put a tool in your hand that maybe one day you can use to support someone. So you're going to see a lot of QR codes, and I am doing the absolute worst thing a speaker could ever do, and that is to tell you to pick up your phone. That's like a big no-no, right? I could lose you. I am definitely taking a risk here by asking you to scan these, because this is going to directly connect you to a resource that I would love for you to save, invite you to tuck that away in your toolkit, because these are excellent resources you may need to use one day. So let's go through warning signs. As you look at this list, does anything look different than what you've perhaps seen with other warning signs you've read before? No. No. It may be expressed slightly different, but it's the same things. You already know how to do this. We just need some different tools in our toolkit. So different tools in our toolkit. So as we look at these warning signs, let's kind of examine what are some things, some of the nuances that we should be aware of as we look at these warning signs. So many of our members of the autism community benefit from alone time. So that in itself is okay and completely expected, especially after an extended social experience, like as Lisa was saying, school. However, when you see a deviation from that, a change, that's when we get concerned, a withdrawal from what is normal. That's exactly what we would do for a neurotypical, right? So when we see them pulling away from a way that is different for them, that's when we know that we're entering into a period of time where we know that this person needs extra support, just as we would for anyone, right? This is especially important when we see that they're losing interest in something that was interesting for them before, right? These shifts can be early indicators that someone's struggling, even if they can't say it directly. And oftentimes they can't, right? And that's not unique to the autism community. So when someone is having difficulty expressing or communicating what's wrong, we really want to look for evidence and a change in behavior that is a difference or a deviation from their daily routine, daily life patterns, rather than just waiting until they can say it with words. We want to seek help as soon as we see a change, professional help. Also, we need to recognize they may not be able to communicate acute distress. For example, 9-year-old, I know, 9-year-old. When asked, do you ever think about hurting yourself? Response is no, but I think about opening the car door and jumping out while they're driving. That autistic individual did not have the words to express how they were feeling or that acute distress. They could not identify it as acute distress, but they were. They were. But thankfully, someone took the time to ask those questions, those discovery questions, in order to be able to intervene and provide that support that that individual needed. Because clearly, even though they weren't able to identify that they were in distress, opening a car door and wanting to jump out is a warning sign, right? Other things to be aware of. In the autism community, they experience stress and trauma just like anyone else. They are no stranger to an ACE score. But with this, they have alternative ways of expressing feelings and communicating what is happening. So we need to be, as family members, parents, practitioners, very aware of what they may be experiencing and providing those support tools, visual tools, communication tools to allow them to be able to express. And we'll give you some examples of that. We also know that changes in routine or structure can feel extremely overwhelming as well. And that can trigger that anxiety, that depression that can begin to snowball. Particularly social situations can be extremely stressful. And then also that exposure to difficult life events, which are inevitable in anyone's life, really make a very heavy emotional impact for them. This one's always difficult, and that's when we look at suicidal talk, ideation, death-related topics that are not a special interest. As we know that it may be someone in the autism community has a special interest that they really enjoy talking about. This is different. This is something that they had not had an interest in before. We know that discussing those things is a warning sign. Self-harm or discussion of self-harm is a warning sign. That person is experiencing some kind of emotional pain and needs that professional support. It is not for us as non-professionals, that's below our pay grade. It is not for us to determine if they need help. It is our job to hot potato it as fast as possible to the right professional who can provide support. We are not responsible for determining if it rises to the level of needing it, if it is, if it isn't. No. Bring someone into your care team to properly support that person and make that decision and assessment. Time's of the essence. Do not put yourself in the position of making that decision unless you're a qualified professional. I am not a qualified professional to determine if someone is at risk. My job is to see the warning sign and get that person to the right professional support as fast as possible. That person deserves it. Other things to consider. It's really important to know that they may look okay for a period of time, But then you'll see kind of a statement for, I don't have a reason to live, or I don't have a purpose, or they may have a change in, oh, why don't you have this? I want to give my brother this, and start giving things away. Those are indicators, just like a neurotypical would have. However, one of the things we see with the autism community is that experience tends to be more sticky. They're sticky thoughts because they have a pattern of rumination. They will stay in that thought cycle longer. And can you imagine what it's like to have that in your thought cycle longer, that you want to open the car door? It's really difficult. Also, you may see some warning signs that would be detailed planning, researching methods, or gathering things. So those could be subtle, or those could be really obvious, but those are things to take very close account for and directly respond to with that kind of support. Also, if you see any kind of sense of hopelessness, that's a deviation from their normal baseline emotional level. And that's a warning sign across all populations. You know how to do this. If you scan that QR code, it will take you to a warning signs toolkit that you can keep in your back pocket that will articulate exactly what kinds of evidence-based things you can use to identify those red flags for someone in the autism community who is experiencing that struggle. So the next thing we're going to look at is, what does support sound like? This is great because you do not have to beat around the bush, for lack of better words, because that's probably the worst phrase you could ever say to someone in the autism community that is in distress. Do you know why? Because it is not clear. It is a figure of speech, and they will look at you like, what are you trying to tell me? When you are supporting someone in the autism community, it's really important to remember their outward presentation might not match their internal distress level. So they might seem calm. They might even laugh when they're overwhelmed. Others might still be working and going to school, not because they're okay, but because the routine is impossible to break. It's the routine. And the communication that they may express might sound different, like our 9-year-old. Yes, I never think about hurting myself, but I'll open the car door. They might not be able to identify those emotions. So they may say things like, I don't know how I feel, or something's wrong, or I feel bad inside, but they won't be able to articulate exactly what that feeling is. So you'll want to allow extra time to process those thoughts and formulate words. Give that wait time so they can process. Help shift those thoughts. Ask any interests or passions if you see that they're beginning to ruminate, or they're getting in that negative thought cycle, or that sticky thoughts. And sticky thoughts, that's a great way to say it in a very literal way to someone, especially a younger person in the autism community. Other clear language that you can say, instead of saying, how are you feeling tonight? Because that feels very performative to someone in the autism community. Like, what's the right way? How am I supposed to answer this? Try, are you okay? Instead of, what's on your mind? What do you want to talk about? And give that extra wait time. Silence is often not disengagement, but it's actually processing, not refusal. Other things to consider would be that sensory overload. I mean, we've all experienced sensory overload at one point in time, right? So it's a familiar friend for everyone at some point, right? But this is something they're living with on a daily basis. And with that tidal wave of feelings, without the language to even identify these new feelings, it can bring what is just a mountain of sensory overload. Plus, you may be in a position where that member of the autism community is in now a place with bright lights, loud noise, and then even touch can become overwhelming. And especially in a crisis, this can impact their ability to communicate. When they could have communicated at this level, when you've seen them before, they may suddenly regress in that skill level and get stuck. Practice the pause. Give them that space to gather, ground. And they may get stuck in those loops of perseveration, repeating words or phrases or shifting away from those thoughts. That's when you can come in with, what is the most special thing to you? What's one thing you love? Just to get them grounded again. But it's important not to dismiss anything that sounds unusual. So if there is anything that seems out of the ordinary, take note, pass it on to the professional that is taking care of them. That care team is so important in all this. Across all of this, the most effective support is being direct, slow the pace, allow that processing time. Avoid assuming you know what they're trying to communicate, and then focus on connecting. Be that safe person to allow them to gather their thoughts, bridge that gap, and be able to communicate exactly what they are experiencing in their own way. That way we can help them in the way that best serves them. And as we look ahead to actually preventing these things, what can we do to support the autism community and reduce that risk of them experiencing it? So if we look at the theoretical framework behind suicide, one theoretical framework is the interpersonal theory of suicide. And I just really like how this shows the intersectionality of all of these factors. When all of these things begin to happen at once, it increases risk. So when you have thwarted belongingness, what a phrase, that's a mouthful. When someone feels really disconnected, it becomes a risk factor. Can you see how someone in the autism community could feel really disconnected? A perceived burdensomeness, feeling like I am a weight on everyone's shoulders. That becomes a risk factor. And then the ability to act upon this and that reduced fear of death. When those things all begin to encroach on one another, that risk increases. So this is a really fascinating way of showing the interrelationship between all of those factors. And this framework really helps us understand why connection and belonging and support are such critical protective mitigating factors for our autism community and everyone. This is not unique to the autism community. This applies for everyone, absolutely everyone. So just a quick peek at building belonging. When we look at building belonging, we want to create social connections that are meaningful and that really resonate with our autism community, because we know that that is one of those aspects of that autism spectrum wheel that Lisa shared that can be a real challenge for our community. So it's important for their well-being and health, to create inclusive environments, make sure we foster identity affirming spaces. It's okay. In fact, it's better than okay. It's whatever you want it to feel when you define yourself and identify as autism. You decide. It's your identity. And you really want to be able to prioritize those meaningful relationships. And that's part of what we get to do, and how we get to serve at the Autism Society is really forging and building those relationships for our community so they can experience this, because it's mission critical. It is life-giving to feel like you belong, right? it is the essence. So one of the things we did is we had created a simple project, and that was giving our community and everyone around us the opportunity to celebrate that regardless of who you are, where you were made perfect. We had a young man who came up to us, and it was a simple project. It's a paper chain made out of like this thin gel-like film. And we invited everyone to write a word of encouragement to the autism community or write a link in honor of. And we made a transparent paper chain, simple as can be. And this young man came up and he wrote this statement down. You were made perfect. It changed everything because there's nothing more that we want our autism community to know, nothing more that we want our practitioners to know, our family members to know, our community to know. You were made perfect. You're made perfect. That's something to celebrate, something you can stand in confidence on, that you're made perfect. So this is just a little bit of what that project looked like. We just started it not even 3 weeks ago. And some of the things that people wrote and shared and healed from as they had that opportunity to belong.
Hey, Melanie, you're muted, just so you know.
I know you can't hear the music, but that made it all much more dramatic with the music. But as you look at the community members coming up and filling out these little slips, it was just the simplest act. But what we didn't expect is how much it would mean. The tears in people's eyes to be able to have space to do this. I mean, I think we all need that. We all need that space, that connection. I just love that we live in a world today where that is where young people, where grandmas, where grown people walk up to a table and that's what they write when they're invited. And that is so exciting. And you're all, by being here, you're making space for people to be seen, to be cared for. That's extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. And it's simple. It's so simple. Looking ahead to some of the other resources that you can take with you today.
Sorry, this is what happens to put the oldest person in the group to in charge of the text, so my apologies.
I appreciate you, Nathan. Hey, I chickened out on running the slides, so beggars can't be choosers.
There we
Take your help.
go. Are we on to perceived burdensomeness?
I will fly past that.
And are we on ruler?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. You want to go to slideshow? You'll want to go to slideshow and go from current slide. No, we'll just leave it like that. It's fine. So some things to do to help someone who is camouflaging or masking is there's so many tools. Ask whoever is part of the care team, what kind of tool can I use? This is one that I love using. It's the Yale ruler. There's a million things out there. I like this one because it describes and gives a tool for communicating emotional intelligence. And it has both energy levels and pleasantness down the other axis, and it allows them to identify based on if I'm really high energy, am I feeling good or am I feeling ugh? So lots of tools that you can use. If they are going through a period of autistic burnout, one important thing to note is I had a person in the autism community who mentioned that they don't like calling it autistic burnout. That term felt like it didn't match what the tool was. So as we look at the tool, Nathan, you can go ahead and click to the next one. We'll go past bullying and trauma. We'll go to the next one. As we look at the tool, the cycle of autistic fatigue, which I like better, and burnout, I just like calling it fatigue. But this tool actually includes the coping strategies and describes it really well for someone who's experienced it and gives them a language to effectively communicate it. So if you're feeling fatigued, and this is applicable for anyone, rest and recharge. Stop, take time, rest your body. Allow yourself to unmask. We all do that when we come home, don't we? Right? I really like the energy counting. That's a wonderful skill. I only have so much energy. How will I choose to use it today? We do not have infinite energy. That's an important skill to teach someone so they can effectively manage their demands in life. And that is going to allow them to effectively cope, right? Identifying triggers. What a great skill to teach someone who is experiencing that fatigue. And then those small changes, they're going to reduce the amount of just stress that is on someone that they're experiencing. So earplugs, taking more breaks, sensory diet, finding a quiet place, whatever that might look like for someone. And it can be vastly different. Those are the little things that are going to make more margin, more capacity to be able to move ahead in a healthy way. Teaching emotional regulation skills, also really important. And this is a wonderful thing to model. So one of my favorites to use that you can whip out on your phone, easy. You don't have to be a trained professional to use. I love using box breathing. Easy as can be. And then I've reduced the language that I'm using when I'm working with that individual. And I'm allowing this visual to do the talking, allowing them to have emotional regulation through a strategy that we know is good for the nervous system. And that teaching emotional awareness, that's just one more tool. Find the tool that works because autistic youth are 4 times more likely to experience emotional dysregulation. Safety planning, very important. This can be difficult to think, wow, how do I do safety planning? This was very new to me earlier in my career, like, oh, this feels very scary to do, but it is an evidence-based suicide prevention strategy. It's concrete, it is step-by-step, but the adaptations for someone who is on the spectrum is to have visual supports, very clear language, and to be always, always, always doing it as a collaborative practice with your care team, your professional care team. So this QR code will take you to a Autism-Informed Reasons for Living toolkit. So that's just one example of something you can use. And we do know that there are a lot of co-occurring mental health conditions that occur with someone who is on the autism spectrum. So providing that executive functioning support is really essential. So, and timely treatment is obviously going to be so important. So things to do is sometimes insurance companies will provide a nurse representative that can guide them through the process as well to be an additional support. Schedule the next appointment before they leave the office so we don't have to put them in the position of being like, oh, I got to pick up the phone and make another appointment. I've used that for myself. Using the online portals, that way you don't have to have that interaction. And then breaking those tasks into smaller steps. So Pomodoro method, 2 minutes, work on your next health-based task for 2 minutes. And then you can put it down for a while. Fill out that form for 2 minutes and then put it down. Other things they could do is write out a script for their doctor or for the phone call. They might not have had to do that for a really long time, but that's okay. It's okay to do it for something that is a high demand task. Crisis response. Not everyone has experience with the autism community, and we know that they have very low reporting frequencies on the crisis hotlines like 988, and they often have sensory overload and emergency silence. So one of the things we offer at the Autism Society is we do first responder trainings so that we can teach our first responders different communication methods, ways to reduce sensory stress, and make sure they are prepared to best meet those needs and serve well. So if you have an interest in having that training, the QR code will take you to that page. So as we close, we just want to acknowledge and show our gratitude for the roles that you play by being here today and supporting the autism community and our entire community in the quiet, selfless ways that you serve. Whether you're parents, whether you're a practitioner or community member, your presence today matters. I can't say that enough. These small, consistent things that you do to show up, the building of belonging, the way you validate people's emotions, the way you reduce people's pressure and allow them to unmask, the way you're using strength-based care and offering that non-judgmental connection, all just, it adds up to the kind of support that makes a difference. So we want to thank you for the work that you do that is quietly and consistently and beautifully done to make sure that you create spaces where people are seen and valued and included. We thank you for what you do. If you could be so kind today as to, if you have a moment and scan this QR code, we have a short 2-question survey for you. And we also have a space for you to create a link. We would love to write a link on our chain for you today, or someone you love, or someone you care for, or whatever encouragement you'd like to pass along. There's a spot there that if you write something in, we would be happy to transcribe onto a link in your honor as a thank you for everything you've done today, so you can join in celebrating that we can all belong together.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Melanie, Lisa, and Nathan. I'm so blown away by everything that you were able to share in such a short amount of time, and I hope that our audience found it helpful as well. I do have a couple of questions that I would love to finish up with answering for our audience. But before we do that, I wanted to share that Emily is working with the Autism and Suicide Prevention Work Group, and she sent through some resources as well that I'm going to include in the recap email. She's thrilled that this information is reaching this group of people. So this email that I'll send will be chock full of all of the resources resources Melanie shared, as well as the ones Emily sent through, and some that we offer here at OSPF too, to really equip you all to get out in your communities and continuing your great work. So if it's okay with you guys, I'll read off the questions in the order that I received them, and we'll try to get to them all. So my first question came from Lisa, and she asked, what is the youngest age and appropriate test that should be used to determine the presence of autism versus a mental or behavioral health problem? I also recognize you guys are not clinicians, so if you don't feel comfortable answering anything, that is totally fine, and I'm sure that you could potentially point Lisa in the direction of a trusted clinician that could help her out.
Absolutely. So yes, I do appreciate that recognition. That would be well above our pay grade, and that would need to be a clinically based response to that question. But it is really an important question when it comes to accessing those types of resources. If you visit our website, we do have two online resource guides. One particularly devoted to the to children with autism that would be has a step-by-step guide through it on how to be able to explore obtaining those resources. We also have a helpline where there's an actual human being as opposed to a chatbot available to be able to answer any questions you may have coming out from that.
Great. Thank you, Nathan. The next question we received is if there's information, is this information applicable to the DD and IDD populations? And is it available in a structured type training?
A great question, to which the answer is it depends. And this is it really does depend on any number of factors that are often very person focused and person centered and person specific. But in general, that is again something that we would be able to have a conversation with each person around and seeing, is it applicable for this particular person under these particular circumstances? It's a difficult a question to answer broadly because of the scope of what we are looking to be able to help support. It is that many members of the autism community do qualify in the DD and IDD spaces specifically. However, there is a very specific criteria that is applied to eligibility for those particular fields that is very much person-centered. And when it comes to the structuring of a training around this, that is certainly something, one of our points of gratitude about being able to have this opportunity is it highlighted for us. Yeah, we should probably have something like this as part of our regular, of our repertoire of trainings and education as well, and thinking about our core services that we deliver on our mission, that this is certainly something that we are grateful to have the opportunity to do today and very much look forward to adding into our regular rotation of trainings and education opportunities that are available.
Great, thank you. I've got one more question. Before I share that, I wanted to share a note from Shauna. She was very grateful that we talked about the masking piece and is hoping other organizations in the community can really get behind this movement of teaching our kids not to mask when they're on the spectrum. So Melanie, I know you touched on that, so thank you. Our last question that I have is from Marcy, and she asked if there are texting options for clients with verbalization issues when stressed.
Yeah, so that's really a great question. So I started in the field 20 years ago as a direct support professional, and I began working with a team of adults on the spectrum. And as it was presented to me at that time, 20 years ago, that several of them were nonverbal, which was code for at that time, and particularly in that context, that this was someone who couldn't communicate, which of course just is not true. And in fact, if we recognize that someone may be non-speaking, that does not mean, first, that they do not communicate, because everyone does. And secondly, that we as support professionals and a support organization and support systems, it is our obligation to explore what options can we offer for someone to discover for themselves what is the most effective way to be able to communicate. And both Lisa and Melanie spoke very eloquently and about the fact that it is about communication in the way that works best for that person. And so the answer to that should be yes, that is available, and it is incumbent upon us. How can we help support that type of access in our advocacy, in our education efforts to ensure that as many pathways to that communication are available to everyone for this particular purpose, but for all purposes, as that's a basic human right.
And the wonderful thing is that 988 does have an entire section that serves the neurodivergent community and the DD community. And part of that is there is a chat feature, and there is a text feature, and then there is a hard of hearing feature.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have today. So to wrap us up, I just wanted to thank you all so much for attending and to our three presenters for all the information that you shared. I hope you all learned something new. I know I did. As a reminder, you'll receive that follow-up email from me before the end of the day today that'll have all the information you need, the post webinar survey that you need to take to get your CE credits and your certificate of attendance, the recording, which I'm going to post on YouTube as soon as we wrap up, as well as the slides and the contact information for Nathan, Melanie, and Lisa. So if you have more specific questions, you can connect with them directly. I also wanted to give you a little sneak peek about what our May topic is going to be for our next monthly webinar. We're going to be discussing the experience of suicide attempt survivors. So on May 19th at noon, I'm going to have Casey Mitlin from Samaritans, who's going to share more about their survivors of suicide attempt support groups, also known as SOSAs, and how we can better attempt or better support these attempt survivors in our communities. I don't have a registration link yet, but I will soon, and it will also be up on our social media, hopefully by the end of the week. Thank you all again so much for attending, spending your lunch hour with us. Nathan, Melanie, Lisa, again, cannot thank you enough. And we hope to see you all next month. Have a great day.
Thank you as well. Thank you everyone who attended.